There is a sentence that FIFA has now used 3 times in the last 2 weeks. The exact same sentence, word for word, released as an official statement by the world's most powerful football organization about 3 separate people in 3 separate incidents at the same tournament. FIFA is not involved in the immigration processes of host countries, including the adjudication of visas. As with previous FIFA events, the host government ultimately determines who receives a visa and is admitted into the country. The first time FIFA said it was Omar Abdelkadir Artan, the Somali referee voted best in Africa, selected through 3 years of merit assessment, turned away at Miami airport after 11 hours of questioning. That was June 7th. The second time FIFA said it was when Iran's support staff members faced entry difficulties entering the United States. FIFA's language was identical, verbatim. The third time was yesterday, June 12th. The subject was Thomas Partey, the former Arsenal midfielder, now at Villarreal, Ghana's vice-captain, a player with 58 international caps who is awaiting trial in London on charges of rape that he has denied and pleaded not guilty to. Canada refused his visa application. He will miss Ghana's opening World Cup match against Panama in Toronto on Wednesday. 3 incidents, 3 different countries, 3 different people, 3 different circumstances. 1 statement. Copy, paste, repeat. And today, Europe is reacting, not with a shrug, not with a diplomatic note, with the kind of institutional and public anger that football governance rarely has to contend with this visibly, this publicly, during a tournament that is supposed to be a celebration of the sport. Let's go through all of it, because the full picture is more complex, more nuanced, and more significant than any single headline. Start with Thomas Partey, because the legal dimension of his case is the reason this visa story is different in kind from the others, and it requires careful explanation. Partey was charged by London's Metropolitan Police in July 2025 with 5 counts of rape and 1 count of sexual assault. In February 2026, 2 additional counts of sexual abuse were added to the charges. He has denied all the allegations and pleaded not guilty to. His bail conditions do not prevent him from playing professional football. His trial is scheduled for November 2026 at Southwark Crown Court, though it has already been pushed back once to June 8, 2027. He was named in Ghana's World Cup squad by manager Carlos Queiroz and given the vice-captaincy. He trained with the squad. He traveled to Washington, D.C. on June 4th. He was at Bryant University in Providence, Rhode Island with the rest of the Ghana team. And then on Friday, June 12th, his visa application to cross into Canada was refused. Canada's Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship Department issued its own statement. It said, "Canada is proud to be a host country for the 2026 FIFA World Cup and is working to facilitate a successful event while maintaining the safety and security of Canadians." Canada has been consistent that hosting major events does not change Canada's immigration laws. Every person seeking to come to Canada is assessed individually based on the facts available and the law that applies. The Canadian government's position is legally coherent. Their immigration law specifies that individuals charged with serious crimes, even without conviction, can be denied entry. Partey is an untried defendant. He is innocent in law, but Canada's border authority applied its own standard. And FIFA said, "We are not involved. The host government decides." Now, here is where this becomes genuinely complicated, and where the European reaction becomes genuinely significant. The argument being made loudly in European football media and by some specific named voices is not that Canada was wrong to apply its own law. It's that FIFA should never have selected Partey for the World Cup in the first place, or at minimum should have anticipated this situation when it awarded a tournament across 3 countries with different immigration laws and different standards for criminal defendants. In other words, the failure is not in the visa decision. The failure is in a governance structure where FIFA selects players as part of a tournament process, a co-host nation applies its own law to that selection, and FIFA's response is identical whether the person is a criminally charged footballer or a referee turned away after 11 hours of questioning, or an Iranian staff member refused entry on national security grounds. We are not involved. 3 times. The same words. Ruud Gullit published an open letter on June 10th, a day before the opening ceremony, calling on Gianni Infantino to resign. Let that sit for a moment. Ruud Gullit, 3-time winner of the Ballon d'Or, European champion with the Netherlands in 1988, one of the most celebrated figures in European football history, published a public open letter asking FIFA's president to step down. His reasoning was direct. The ongoing visa controversies, he said, represent an unacceptable failure of leadership. A tournament that cannot guarantee entry to its own selected officials and routinely deploys its "we are not involved" statement while people's careers and participation rights are decided by 3 different sets of immigration laws.
Gullit's letter was widely covered across European football media. It was republished in the Netherlands, Germany, France, and Italy, and it arrived in the same news cycle as the Partey story, intensifying a conversation that European football institutions have been having increasingly publicly. But Gullit was not alone in the European reaction, and the full list of visa cases, now officially at 6 named individuals, makes the pattern unmistakable. Omar Artan, Somali referee, denied entry to the United States. FIFA, not involved. UEFA's response, appointed him to officiate the Super Cup on August 12th in Salzburg. Ayman Hussein, Iraqi player, visa difficulties entering the United States. His situation was resolved, but required significant additional processing that delayed his arrival at the team camp. Talal Salah, also Iraq, similar visa processing issues. Both Iraqi players had their situations managed, but the delays created preparation complications for the national squad. Wudensky Pierre, Haiti, a player in Haiti's historic squad, the country making its return to a World Cup after decades, who faced entry difficulties. Haiti is one of the 19 countries under a full travel ban, making the entry process for its players a more complex managed exemption than the standard World Cup participant process. Briel Embolo, Switzerland's striker, who faced visa complications, described as a technical issue that was subsequently resolved but created significant concern within the Swiss camp in the days before the tournament began. And now, Thomas Partey, Ghana's vice-captain, denied entry to Canada. 6 people, 6 separate incidents, 6 applications of the same FIFA statement about not being involved in the immigration processes of host countries. And a 7th situation, Iran's entire squad based in Tijuana, Mexico, crossing the border for match days, that represents the most extraordinary logistical arrangement ever required of a qualified World Cup nation. The European institutional response has taken several forms. UEFA's appointment of Artan to the Super Cup was the most visible act of institutional solidarity. Alexander Seferin's statement said, "Football is made to connect people," and UEFA wanted to show its respect for Artan's outstanding officiating skills. The Somali Sports Ministry described UEFA's action as upholding the principles of integrity and fair play in football. The European leagues and FIFPro, who have a formal complaint with the European Commission about FIFA's calendar and governance, have not issued a specific statement about the visa cases, but their existing institutional position that FIFA operates without adequate accountability to other stakeholders in the sport is being amplified by every fresh incident. The social media reaction in Europe has been extensive and consistent, fans from across the continent describing the FIFA statement as an abdication of responsibility, comments underneath every news article pointing out the irony of an organization that expanded its tournament to 48 teams in the name of global inclusion, while repeatedly deploying a statement that says it is not responsible for who gets to participate. How can a country be allowed to host a World Cup if they are going to deny key players entry? Wrote one fan on social media, quoted by legit.ng. FIFA cannot just wash their hands of this and hide behind government rules. If you cannot welcome the world, you should not be hosting the world. That sentiment, informal from a football fan commenting on a news article, captures something that Gullit's open letter and UEFA's Super Cup appointment are both expressing through more formal channels. The idea that there is a minimum standard of welcome that hosting a World Cup requires, and that this tournament is failing to meet it consistently for a specific and documentable reason. Now, let's be precise about the Thomas Partey case specifically, because it is different from the Arten case in an important way, and conflating them would be unfair to the complexity of both. Omar Arten was denied entry because of U.S. vetting on national security grounds. He had been specifically selected by FIFA. He had committed no offense. His denial was arbitrary from a sporting perspective and reflected nothing about his character or conduct. The outrage was entirely justified.
Thomas Partey's case is genuinely complicated. Canada's law provides that individuals charged with serious crimes can be denied entry. Partey is a defendant in a serious criminal case. He has not been convicted. He is innocent in law. But Canada applied its own standard. And while the sporting injustice, a player missing a World Cup match because of a pending trial, not a conviction, is real and significant, the underlying reason is fundamentally different from Arten's case. Carlos Queiroz, Ghana's manager, was blunt about what the denial means for his team. He described it as deeply unfair and said Partey's absence for the Panama match significantly changes Ghana's preparation and options. Ghana had named Partey as vice-captain in a deliberate signal of support for a player whose trial is 18 months away. Now he sits in Rhode Island watching his teammates prepare for a match he cannot be part of. He will be eligible for Ghana's second match against England in Boston on June 23rd. England, the country where the allegations against him originated, where the Metropolitan Police charged him, where his trial is scheduled. It is a fixture with layers that go far beyond football. Akram Hakimi dimension adds another thread to this. The Morocco defender is also awaiting trial on rape charges in France, charges he has denied. He has not faced any visa issues in the United States. He has not faced any issues in Mexico. His situation, a player in a similar legal position to Partey, competing freely at the same tournament, highlights that Canada's application of its immigration law to Partey was not a universal FIFA policy. It was one host nation exercising its own judgment. The same tournament, different host nation, different outcome. FIFA cannot resolve this. Its three-country hosting structure creates exactly this kind of inconsistency. Its statement, identical across all cases, is the only response it has. Here's the bigger picture, and it requires stepping back from the individual cases to see the pattern. The 2026 World Cup was awarded on the premise that North America's three countries would work in concert to deliver a unified tournament experience. Three countries, one tournament, seamless movement of players, officials, and fans across three different immigration regimes.
What has happened instead is that each country has applied its own laws, sometimes in conflict with each other, sometimes in conflict with FIFA's own selections, while FIFA issues the same statement repeatedly, disavowing any responsibility for the outcomes. This is not a failure of individual visa decisions, it is a structural failure of tournament architecture. FIFA built a co-hosted tournament across 3 countries with 3 different legal systems and 3 different immigration policies, and produced no mechanism for resolving conflicts between its own participant selections and the entry decisions of those countries. And when that mechanism was needed, for Artan, for Hussein, for Salah, for Pierre, for Embolo, for Partey, the mechanism that existed was a press release. Europe's reaction is not just about these individual cases, it's about what they reveal, about an organization that expanded its tournament for commercial reasons, distributed it across borders for commercial reasons, and then disclaimed responsibility for the consequences when those borders operated as borders do, according to their own laws, indifferent to FIFA's selections. Ruud Gullit asked Infantino to resign. UEFA gave the refused referee the Super Cup, and FIFA, for the 3rd time in 2 weeks, issued the statement that says, "The host government decides, we are not involved." Whether Europe's reaction produces any institutional change before this tournament ends or after it is the question the sport's governance structures will be answering for some time. What I want to ask you today is this: at what point does FIFA's not involved position stop being defensible? Is it now, with 6 named cases and Ruud Gullit calling for a resignation? Or does the organization have the right to point to its host agreements and say this was always the arrangement? And here's the football question. Does Thomas Partey's absence for the Panama match genuinely hurt Ghana's chances of advancing from Group L? Or does Carlos Queiroz have enough depth to absorb it? Leave it in the comments. This story is moving fast, and every perspective matters. If this gave you the full picture, hit the like button. Subscribe if you're following this tournament properly, every controversy, every match, every angle, all the way to July 19th. This story is still developing, and as always, football never stays quiet for long. See you in the next one.